let's dive into this. What we expect from Nebraska's defense to look like this fall, at least the information we have at this point, and how we believe things may turn out. Again, Caleb Benning, all right, did an interview the other day, had some interesting quotes. All right, one of the main points Benning was looking to stress was that the defense this year will be faster, stronger, and swarming to the football. And I quote, "The term is ferociousness," Benning said. "We are faster, stronger, and much more athletic. We will suffocate the ball and get to the runner." All right, ladies and gentlemen, give me your thoughts. Give me your end quote. And give me your thoughts. Give me your reaction. All right, text in. What's that text line number again there, Jake?
402-464-5685.
All right, Jake, what's your initial reaction when you hear that?
Well, I think it's always good to hear, that there's going to be more aggressive. Unfortunately, that hasn't always come true. I mean, we've heard coordinators say that in the past, and sometimes that aggressiveness has actually even hurt Nebraska. But it's going to be so fascinating to see what they do, because John Butler, obviously, 1 year in the system, if you will, obviously a long time, has been around the 3-3-5. But with the Nebraska system, they wanted to continue that, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought they might kind of, once Tony Butler left, to change it. But to Matt Rule's credit, and he said it. Why would we change something that's been working? And Nebraska's had a top 25 defense. The last couple of years. Look at the total defense last year, 18th in the country. The scoring defense, 17th in the country. So I agree not to go all outside of the system, as long as you got enough people in place that can continue to coach that. Now, when you start talking about kind of making your own tweaks on it, which obviously Coach Butler is going to want to do, again, it sounds great. I mean, what's the opposite of that? It's like, no, we're actually going to just sit back and be a bend but don't break defense. That's not going to get people excited. I'm interested to see, because again, I've heard in the past, that was something with Scott Frost defenses. We're not going to be as high on the total yards. And remember, the idea was because the offense wasn't going to be holding onto the ball too much. Like, as you said earlier, a couple of weeks ago, that offense never necessarily made it to Lincoln. But that was their ideas. Yeah, we might not be the highest in total defense, but that's because we're going to be hopefully getting turnovers and, taking risks and this and that. And it just, I don't know, some of those Schneider defenses, particularly the one in 2021 that went 3-9, was pretty good. But I just don't know if they ever, felt like an attacking defense. And that's what we'd love to see. And to do that, Nebraska is going to have to make some more big plays. Again, as I kind of stated, they had a good defense overall in rankings and points per game, total yards. That's the most important thing. But you go into like interceptions. They were tied for 60th in interceptions. They were tied for 43rd in sacks. So those are the type of things that, those numbers would have to move up to really kind of think of it as an attack style defense. Do they have the personnel to do it? Can you do it through scheme? That remains to be seen.
So you don't want to hear that they're going to be slower, weaker, and softer. That's not what you want to hear?
No.
Is that what I'm hearing from you?
That's not a good speech, no.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I thought you made some good points, because Tony White's first year, if you remember, before that year, the tackling had struggled for a long time. We brought in a tackling consultant at one point, if you remember that, okay? Which still blows my mind to this day. Those are called football coaches, but I digress. His first year, the tackling was as good as it's been in maybe over a decade, but at least a decade. But there weren't a whole lot of turnovers, and we were producing a lot of turnovers on our end. They put more of an emphasis on forcing turnovers a year ago. We had multiple turnovers that went straight into touchdowns, a la the Tommy Hill pick 6 versus Colorado. There was more throughout the season as well. John Bullock had one versus Purdue. So the turnovers and the points off turnovers went up. I did feel like the tackling regressed a little bit. It's almost kind of like with the offensive line. 2 years ago, the run blocking was great. The pass pro, not as great. A year ago, the pass pro was better, but the run blocking wasn't as good. There's only so much time in a day, so you've got to prioritize what you really want to emphasize. Here's what I will say. And I'm going to go back. Let me find his. I want to read the quote again real quick, because what resonated with me is what I saw in the bowl game from the young players, and a majority of them are going to be back this year. Obviously not Ty and Nash, but a majority of the other guys I'm going to talk about are going to be back. And then we've added some guys like Dawson McCullough and Marquez Watson-Trent, who are only going to help make us better. But I'm going to go back to his quote. And I quote, "The term is ferociousness," Benning said. "We are faster, stronger, and much more athletic. We will suffocate the ball and get to the runner." One word pops into my head when I read that, and that was swarming defense, swarming. Think back to the bowl game. There was a lot of guys all over the field. I felt like that defense was swarming in the backfield, blitzers coming free. You could see the athleticism. You saw Vincent Shavers. You saw a lot of the young guys on defense. Riley Van Poppel, bad pun intended, popped off a little bit that game. You could see why these guys were highly recruited and highly sought after. I've used the word explosiveness on defense, and every time I do, it feels awkward because it's using the word explosiveness with defense. I feel like we are going to be, I've said our second level of our defense is as athletic, easy for me to say, as it's been in a long time. We got youth, okay, up front. We've got some youth in other spots. I do think there's going to be an adjustment period where they're learning, growing, getting experience, getting on the same page. Maybe few big plays happen in the meantime. But for me, I think it's going to be, there was an attacking defense in that bowl game. There was a swarming athletic style of defense in that bowl game. Do I think we're going to be better as an overall whole on defense? No way of knowing. A lot of question marks right now. To say that we'd be better isn't something that I would anticipate. Not saying it can't happen, but I anticipate us doing certain things. Being faster, being more athletic, okay? When he said stronger, that's going to start up front with the defensive linemen, whoever the starters are and however they play this year. It's being stronger is all 11, but it starts up front. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I do expect them to play faster, play with a little bit more athleticism, be even more swarming. There's probably going to be some more miscues early on while they're young and learning and adjusting and everything else. Some of these guys haven't started or played a lot of ball, and that's okay. But when I read that, he basically described 90% of what I expect. I expect a swarming, attacking, fast defense. By the way, what we saw against Boston College. Stronger, that's going to remain to be seen starting up front with the defensive line. And whether we're better overall or not as a whole, largely is going to be due to, can we prevent the big plays on the back end and prevent any big plays up front? Because that's really the question marks that I have. But that's kind of what I expect to see from the defense this year. What say you, Jake?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Jumping to the text line here, there's a few different thoughts on this. Gorilla Bear says, I think the defense inevitably regresses. They lost a lot of proven talent, and they have a first-year DC. Gus Mohawk says, I think the defense is being slept on, and maybe that's the fire they need. I think we have a player that gets 10 sacks this year. I don't know who it is, but I think it's coming. Black shirts, baby. And then also off of, Bada Bing on YouTube says that he thinks we have at least 2 all-conference players on this team, and he really likes Van Poppel. Also hearing that they're going to blitz heavy, which he likes to hear as well. So, kind of different thoughts all over the board there. And again, it's kind of that talent. And if you can get those sort of guys to go to Sean McCullough, like we said, has all the talent in the world, is it going to register into like he was stating, 10 sacks or something close to that, pressures that can really change the way that the defense or the offensive coordinator is planning to attack. And then I thought you made a good point, because you can think of times last year. We don't want to completely act like this team last year didn't, because I threw those numbers out there. Pick sixes are better than picks. Mm-hmm. And so, and we saw that Sierra Wright had one, John Bullock had one, and then Tommy Hill had one. So if you can get 3 of those a year, that's not, so it's not like they're that far off. We'll have to see, if you kind of you blend in some more zone coverages, you might get some more picks as you're kind of looking at the quarterback as opposed to man-to-man. So we'll have to see kind of what they favor to do. But, especially with having that fifth defensive back out there that they talk about, if you can get pressure with 3 or the 4 that you bring in with the jack linebacker or however you're doing it, should have enough guys sitting back there to get in at opportune times. Then the other thing is, as we look at this schedule, how many of these teams are offensive-led teams? I'll tell you, Michigan State at this point are not. So when you kind of go through at least the first part of the schedule, Maryland might be starting a freshman quarterback. There's just a lot of teams and opportunity for this defense to suffocate the opposition.
Maybe USC and Penn State, offensive-led teams.
Yeah.
Maybe UCLA, but they got gigantic question marks with Nico Iamaleava themselves. So maybe just 2 of the 12 that we know right now are more offensive-minded. And I don't even know that Penn State's more offensive-minded. They're probably more defensive-minded.
Yeah.
Which is just going to be really good on offense.
Yeah.
So that's a fair point to make as well. Dawson, McCullough, Williams, and Warren. Now, Williams is a first-round talent, but a young guy learning. So we'll see how that process unfolds. I'm not saying he's going to be a first-round pick or not. The talent is there. It's about the process, and can it come sooner rather than later? Those are two guys who could be 10-sack players. Like, I still remember when DeMario Williams had 10 sacks. Nobody had any idea he was going to put his hand in the dirt at all that year, let alone get 10.5 sacks on the season. So maybe someone will pop off and surprise us. And honestly, if it's a couple of the guys I just mentioned, it wouldn't even surprise us. We just don't know if it's going to happen yet because we haven't seen it yet. I will say this. I do think this is the most talented defense we've had in a while. So the ceiling to be better than we've been is absolutely there. There's also a lower floor just because there's more question marks. So to me, the defensive side of the ball is as interesting as the offensive side of the ball, just doesn't get talked about as much because, offense is what people are more interested in. They keep changing the rules to favor the offense because of that. So we'll see what happens. I expect speed, athleticism, attacking. I expect there to be a learning curve. The question mark about whether we're going to be stronger and probably whether we're going to be better or as good or not starts up front with the D-line and how they play.
Just talk about the defense, and I brought up the schedule late there, and so I wanted to go and look and see. We talk about the schedule not being as difficult. Cincinnati is one of 3 games that we already include. We talked about Penn State and USC. Cincinnati, the only other opponent outside of Houston Baptist, which I did not go and run down their numbers. But of the other opponents, every other team finished 100 or below in either scoring offense or total offense. Every other one, from Akron to Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, UCLA, and Iowa, all either had a total offense or scoring offense ranked 100 or below. Cincinnati, Penn State, and USC are the only ones that did not.
Just for those who don't know, Cincinnati was still 5-7 last year.
They were not, they were 89th in scoring offense, so it's not like they were that far off. 36th in total offense.
So 75% of our opponents finished somewhere between 100 to 134th in the country offensively in some major stat a year ago.
That's correct.
Dude, the Kool-Aid, it's just right there, man. It's just right there.